The last time Linda Calloway saw her son, he was wearing a gray hoodie, sneakers with a torn left sole, and a look in his eyes she had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness. Absence, like whatever had been holding him together, had finally let go. That was a Thursday night in October. By Friday morning, he was gone. No note, no text, no phone call. Just a door left open, and a mother standing in the middle of her kitchen, holding a coffee cup that had already gone cold. The police told her to wait 72 hours. Her pastor told her to pray. Her sister told her to prepare for the worst. And Linda Calloway looked at every single one of them and said something that nobody expected. "I'll walk the whole country if I have to." This is the story of what happened next. Who they were, Linda Calloway was 56 years old when her world collapsed. She had spent the last 3 decades working as a school cafeteria manager in Columbus, Ohio, a job she described, when people asked, as chaotic, underpaid, and the best thing I ever did. She knew every kid by name. She could tell which ones hadn't eaten at home just by the way they carried their trays. Her son Marcus was her only child. He had been, by all accounts, a bright and gentle young man. He graduated college with a degree in graphic design. He had a small apartment, a group of friends who called him the quiet, funny one, and a habit of texting his mother every Sunday morning, usually just a picture of whatever he was eating for breakfast and a single emoji. He was 27 years old. And then slowly, then all at once something changed. It started with the job loss. Then the breakup. Then the weeks of not sleeping. Then the phone calls at 3 a.m. that didn't make sense, words tumbling over each other. Thoughts that looped without landing anywhere. Linda would stay on the phone until he quieted down, whispering the same things she had whispered to him when he was small. "I'm right here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. You're okay." But she wasn't right there. She was 400 miles away. And Marcus was not okay. The diagnosis came in August, schizoaffective disorder. The doctors were careful with the word, kind about it. They gave Linda pamphlets and a number to call. They said with the right medication and support, Marcus could live a full life. The medication worked, for a while, until it didn't, until Marcus stopped taking it, because it made him feel like he was watching himself through dirty glass, until the structure around him slowly dissolved, until October came and the door was left open and the coffee went cold. The system fails. What most people don't understand, what Linda didn't fully understand yet, is that when someone with a mental health crisis disappears, they don't just fall off the grid. They fall into a completely different world, a parallel America that most people drive past every day without looking. She filed the missing persons report the morning after he vanished. The officer at the desk was not unkind. But he was honest. "Ma'am, your son is an adult. If he left voluntarily, there's not a lot we can do. These cases, especially with mental health involved, they're complicated." Complicated. She would hear that word 127 more times over the next 2 years. She hired a private investigator. He found nothing. She posted in every Facebook group for missing people she could find. She called 211, the social services hotline, in Columbus, in Cincinnati, in Cleveland. She called the National Alliance on Mental Illness hotline. She called shelters. She called hospitals. She called morgues. That last word, she never let herself linger on it. But she called them anyway. Because not knowing was worse than anything. Weeks became months. And then one afternoon, a social worker named Brianna, a stranger who had seen one of Linda's Facebook posts, sent her a message. "I can't confirm it's your son, but I saw a man matching this description at a shelter in Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago. He wouldn't give his name. But he had a tattoo on his left forearm, a small compass. Does that match?" Marcus had gotten that tattoo at 22. He said it was to remind himself that he could always find his way. Linda was packed and on a bus within 2 hours. The walk begins Pittsburgh was a dead end. By the time she arrived, Marcus, if it had been Marcus, was gone. The shelter staff were kind but bound by privacy rules. They couldn't confirm or deny anything. They gave her a pamphlet about mental health resources. She already had 17 of them at home. But she stayed. She sat outside that shelter for 4 days, watching the people who came and went. She talked to them. Not in a desperate, searching way, but the way she had always talked to people. Like they mattered. Like their story was worth hearing. And they told her things. About the way a person in mental health crisis moves through a city. About which corners are safer. About which shelters have strict intake rules that push people away. About how a man who is afraid not of his mother, but of everything might travel. West, usually, toward warmth. Toward anonymity. And so, Linda Calloway changed her strategy entirely. She stopped waiting by the phone. She stopped filing reports that went nowhere. She stopped trusting in systems that were not built for this. She started walking. Not literally at first. Bus tickets mostly, but she got off at every stop. She walked the streets of every city. She visited every shelter, every soup kitchen, every drop-in center she could find. She showed Marcus's photo to hundreds of people. She wrote the date and location of each stop in a spiral notebook, which she refilled 4 times over the next 2 years. She had retired early, cashed out what little she had. She ate at soup kitchens herself, not because she had to, but because it put her in the same rooms where Marcus might be. People asked her why she didn't just post more online. Because Marcus doesn't have a phone. Because Marcus is not online. Because Marcus is somewhere out there where I have to go to find him. You can't search for someone on a screen who lives in the physical world. She walked through Cincinnati, through Louisville, through Nashville, through Memphis. She slept in bus stations, in cheap motels, in a church that opened its doors when it saw she was alone. She developed plantar fasciitis in her right foot. She kept walking. The world around her while Linda walked. The world had opinions. Her sister called every week at first. Then, every few weeks. Then she stopped calling. Linda understood. She did not resent it. People have limits. She had simply decided that hers were different. A grief counselor she saw only once told her gently that she might be using the search as a way to avoid processing her loss. That sometimes, loving someone means accepting that you cannot save them. Linda looked at her and said, "With all due respect, he is not dead. I refuse to grieve someone who is still breathing somewhere." She never went back. But the doubts came anyway, the way doubts always do at 2 a.m. in a bus station in St. Louis when she hadn't slept in 36 hours. When her feet hurt so badly she had to bite her lip to stand up. When her phone showed 17 missed calls from people who loved her and needed her to come home. She would take out the spiral notebook. She would read the names of the people she had met. A man named Gerald, who had known her son by the sound of his description alone, and said, "Quiet guy." Sat in the corner. Drew pictures in a sketchbook. I remember him. A woman at a drop-in center in Knoxville who said, "I think he was here about 6 weeks ago. He helped me carry groceries." That was Marcus. Helping someone carry groceries while his own life was in pieces. That was exactly Marcus. Linda would close the notebook and stand back up. Because every name in that book was a coordinate. A dot on a map of her son's invisible journey. And she was getting closer. She could feel it the way a mother feels things not in her bones, but somewhere beneath them. The phone call 847 days after Marcus disappeared, Linda was standing outside a gas station in Albuquerque, New Mexico, eating a granola bar, when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. She had learned to brace herself for these moments. Every ring could be news, and news had been wrong so many times. She answered. The woman on the other end worked at a community health clinic in Phoenix, Arizona. She said she couldn't share details, but she said she had a patient who had, that morning, for the first time in what appeared to be a long time, asked for help. And when they had asked this patient if there was anyone they wanted to contact, he had sat quietly for a long moment and then said one word. "Mom, Linda Calloway sat down on the sidewalk in front of that gas station in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she did not try to stand up for 20 minutes. She was on a bus to Phoenix within the hour. The reunion, he was thinner than she remembered. There were lines in his face that were new. His hair was long, and his eyes when they first met hers across the lobby of that clinic were uncertain. Like he wasn't sure she would actually be there. Like part of him had decided she must have stopped looking. She crossed that lobby in 11 steps. She counted them later. Because that is the kind of thing you do when a moment is so large your mind has to break it into pieces to hold it. She put her arms around him, and she did not let go. And Marcus Calloway, 27 years old when he vanished, 29 years old now, standing in the lobby of a clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, said the only words that existed in that moment. "I didn't think you'd still be looking." And Linda pulled back just far enough to look him in the eyes. "Baby, I will always be looking." What came after recovery is not a single moment. It is not the reunion scene. It is everything that comes after. Marcus began treatment at a facility in Phoenix. He agreed this time, not because he had to, but because, as he would later tell his mother, he was tired. Tired of running from something that lived inside his own mind. Tired of being alone with it. It was not easy. There were setbacks, medication adjustments, days when the progress of the previous week seemed to evaporate. Days when Marcus couldn't look at his mother without feeling a guilt so large it almost swallowed him whole. On one of those days, Linda sat beside him and said something he carried with him from that moment forward. "You didn't abandon me. You got lost. And I found you. And we don't owe each other guilt. We just owe each other presence. That's it. Just show up. Every day. Just show up." 6 months later, Marcus was well enough to move back to Columbus. He got a small apartment, 2 blocks from his mother's house. He started drawing again, mostly landscapes, big open ones, with long roads disappearing into the horizon. Linda went back to work. Not at the cafeteria, she was done with that chapter. She started volunteering at a local mental health advocacy organization, helping families navigate a system she now knew intimately and infuriatingly well. And every Sunday morning, without fail, Marcus texts her, usually just a picture of his breakfast. I want to say something before we end. If you are watching this and you have a family member who has disappeared into the world of mental illness or homelessness, I want you to hear this directly. You are not crazy for not giving up. You are not in denial. You are not enabling. You are a person who loves someone, and love that refuses to quit is not weakness. It is one of the most extraordinary things a human being is capable of. Linda Calloway walked 3,000 miles, not because she was certain she would succeed, but because the alternative a life lived having stopped looking was something she could not carry. She chose the miles, and the miles brought her home. If this story reached you today, share it. There is someone in your life who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed to XeeStory yet, do that now. We are here every week with stories that remind you what human beings are actually capable of. Thank you for watching.